I would like to welcome in particular this evening the scholars that made it possible. Christina Teichmann of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation is here today. We've been partnering for the last 3 years. Christina was our third year. The book and the discourse cafes, well, in essence is our partnership. Thank you very much that the publication, the very first for the FVZS Institute, could be possible, and that through your support we can come in the end. And of course, the editorial team, Stephanie, I'll thank a little bit later, but specifically the publishers, Sun Media. I saw earlier. As you welcome, I think it's great that we can partner. It was a load sharing partnership at stages. We had to stop some of our meetings, but in the end, saw the light and we have the applications. So thank you very much for that. There's a number of our discourse cafe participants here, and I would really like to thank you for the type of conversations fostered in the discourse cafes. And then specifically also those of you who decided to write about your experience in the discourse cafes. Stephanie will highlight some of your stories later, and I will call you to the front of the stage to hand over the copy. But I'd like to particularly welcome Magnus Hartman and Jordan Pint, in the absence of knowledge, Lana Davids and Emily van den Bergen here. As they over the last 4 years driven the Discourse Cafe initiative started as breakfast conversations 4 years ago. That's progressed into what we have today, and I'm really glad to also take up some of the stories and conversations that we had 4 years ago in the publication. Thank you for being here. Thank you that we can celebrate with all of you. Thank you that this can be a Discourse Cafe. When I think about the book, when I think about the book in the last couple of days, and when I reflected through the book took me on a very interesting journey to where a number of things started. And as I hope over the last couple of weeks, because of conversations with campus in our country, I hope that it will play a critical part, and perhaps continue to play a critical part in the conversations, not only in this community, but also in other communities. I prepared a speech 2 days ago, which is something very strange to me. It's not something that I intended, but after a couple of conversations over the last couple of weeks, I decided last night on my way to establish that I'll change that. And I'll tell you about 3 very interesting conversations that I had over the last couple of days and weeks, which I think impact on the idea of the capture. The first one was a gathering of our think tank, established university, and a very beautiful think tank, which gathers about once a month on campus under the theme, think about the theme, the city of the future. In this week's conversation, Brian is one of the think tank members of this week's conversation. Tim Harris spoke about economic possibilities of the city of the future. Of course, he's from West Europe and Cape Town, so we want to encourage us to make sure to take up opportunities in the province, etc., to make sure that the province is growing. As part of the conversation, one of the participants, well, of course, gladly listened and engaged with Tim and other participants, but as part of what she realized should be in the conversation, she boldly asked, how is it possible that we can only talk about beautifulness and what Cape Town can look like a beautiful Cape Town prosper, and not also talk about the dirtiness of issues inside, problematic issues, the issues that affect a large number of our citizens. conversation and the next one was a conversation that we had last night. A conversation, the title that was a conversation connected to being an agent of change, students taking up their role as agents of change, and the title of campus specifically last night. And in the middle of the conversation, as well, at 6 o'clock, the electricity went off. Of course, the generators at the time of campus kicked in after a while, so the conversation continued, and then the generators went off. Everything was pitch dark in the room. So dark that the students had to take out their cell phones and show it, point it to me, so they can at least see me. And something of the change agency and something of the need to make a difference and make a change and take up tangible, fixable solutions to problems that we face also when we cannot see each other in the darkness sometimes of the South African reality, I think is pertinent to the voices that you read in this book. The third conversation was one that happened on Sunday. That was a conversation between myself, Johan Fourie, a colleague at the Department of Economics, and Professor Willie Estreizer. Now, Willie Estreizer you read more about in the book, but in essence we wanted to talk to him about where South Africa is and where South Africa was in the 80s and the 90s, what type of negotiations influenced South Africa, so that we can better understand the dynamics of South Africa today. To, I suppose, young voices, thinkers, academics at Stellenbosch University, trying to learn something from Willie Estreizer and his experience. About an hour in the conversation, we realized that although the issues are similar, although certain themes recur, the language of the conversation and the generation of the conversation is totally different. There were certain things that Willie was not aware, and when he became aware, quickly realized that some of the answers that he thought he might have doesn't and cannot apply to the language of the conversations that young people in South Africa have today. And that, I think, was quite a surprise to him. It certainly was to me and Johan. And I think in this book, it wants to highlight not only the voices of the thought leaders of a generation, a previous generation, but also the voices of younger thought leaders reflecting on the voices of a previous generation and making sense of these voices in our contexts, in our stories. Younger voices taking up their role as thought leaders. That's definitely what the book doing. It wants us to engage the writers, the younger thought leaders, wants us to engage and think about our role as active change agents, making a difference here, taking up the opportunities, remaking the challenges, and it wants to continuously interact with the voices of the previous generation and the voices that we need to learn from. I hope something is reflected in your experiences, or that you experience that when you read the book. It's certainly what has happened to us in the discourse cafes, and I hope that we will continue to not only capture some of these experiences, but capture the ethos of a new generation trying to learn from our mothers and fathers and trying to make sense of the realities of South Africa and applying their skills and understanding in our current reality. Dit is 'n fantastiese boek met fantastiese stories. Lees dit asseblief, en ek hoop oor die volgende paar jaar, Stephanie en Emily na haar besigheid, het ons nie net nog 'n hele klomp diskoskafees nie, maar kry ons ook die geleentheid om ander stemme verder vas te werk. Later we'll share stories about Van Zyl Slabbert and how Van Zyl Slabbert in his own thinking engaged with some of the current realities that I think South Africa faces. And I hope that in 30 or 40 years time, Stephanie, that the younger students and younger South Africans sitting before some of our writers and thinkers will once again reflect and engage about the statues that we've built, the stories that we've made, the lessons that we've shared, and hopefully history will judge us kindly. Baie dankie, dit is baie lekker om dit met julle te deel, en ek hoop julle geniet die boek. Ek gee onmiddellik oor aan die voorvrou vir die boek, Stephanie Nieuwoudt, Onder Stephanie se leiding kon ons die boek publiseer. Dankie Stephanie.
Hello everybody. I thought I would speak in Afrikaans, but anyway now I decided to speak in English because I see people who will not be able to understand Afrikaans. I'm always impressed when people like Leslie can just get up in front of an audience and speak, but as he said to me once, it's because he's a dominee. He was trained to do that. So I'm much more comfortable when I'm behind my computer writing. But anyway, what I set out to do with this book, Leslie, when I started at the Frederick van Zyl Institute on a contract, right at the beginning he said to me he was thinking of doing a book. We should publish a book. And immediately I thought, good idea, I love books. Anytime, give me a book and I'm happy, so I'll work on it. We actually started working on the book, what I always had in my mind was that I wanted it to reflect the young voices. I wanted it not only to read from a young perspective, but also look young. And I think we succeeded in that. I hope everybody else thinks so as well. And I also wanted to focus, that's why you see these pictures of the writers, right? It's actually quite a strange way of doing it. Usually the author's CVs come at the back, but in this case, I wanted everybody to know these clever people who are young and who actually engage with such weighty issues. So yeah, I'm happy about this. Thank you, Justa, it's the Sun Media team. I think the book looks very nice. What I looked, as Leslie said just now, this book really shows thought leaders, people who really engage with not only the people of an older generation, but it also reflects where we are right now, the issues on campus, the issues in society that these students have written for this book. They really have engaged with that. It also reflects the vision and values of the University of Stellenbosch. The values that I see right through the book, especially are those of mede-verantwoordelikheid, what's it in Engels? Co-responsibility, service leadership, and yeah, and I think in most of these essays you see these young people very keen to engage, to be servant leaders, to be responsible. They realize that they are responsible, that we can't just leave things for the powers that be, for the politicians, etc. And I am very proud, and I loved working with them. Although I must say, I thought it would be a question of telling them, okay, guys, write for me, and then this stuff would come in and I would edit. But we all know how students are. I see Tosca's laugh, smiling at the back there, because students do not necessarily respond to emails. But they also know that I don't give up, so I would send emails, and if they didn't respond, I would call them, sometimes quite late at night, sometimes very early in the morning. A few of them were not happy when they were called up early in the morning after they'd gone to bed late at night, but hey, the book has been done. Okay, then to all these students, young people who wrote, I want to read this. I believe that you will maintain enthusiasm and a sense that you can make a difference in future. You might become a bit more critical in future, you might become a bit more cynical, and you might start asking different questions. You might also engage in other ways than you are doing now, but fundamentally, I do believe that you represent a generation who has the power to make a difference, for whom monuments will be built one day, and who are able to build monuments and not deface them. Then I want to say thank you to Desmond, who, when there was a crisis, he really jumped in and helped me. Desmond, thank you. Sometimes I would scream and shout and really panic, and then he would come in and he would help me. So I'd have to say thank you for that. He really did a lot of work on the editing as well. That's it.
Is er 'n nuusbreek? Baie dankie, Stephanie.
Just one thing, I want to hand over books to the writers who are here. Tosca, Faithy, please. Marianto, Sigle, Gilbert,
Sommer daar voorwys. Nie so voor.
Saunders, en Barnes.
Stephanie wie nie so gestaan by hulle.
Maybe we should just get a bit closer. Okay. Oh my God.
Baie dankie, Stephanie. Christina, can I call you to the floor for a couple of words from the sponsor? Thank you. Thank you.
On behalf of the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, I would like to extend, that's not a good start. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you. I also would like to congratulate the Friedrich von Salz-Labat Institute, as well as the editor Stephanie and all the authors for this wonderful book. Also to the designers, I think it really reflects what this Discourse Cafe is all about, good ideas, creativity, and it's very much alive. I really enjoyed reading it. Our partnership has indeed started 3 years ago in 2013, and the idea was to provide a platform with the Discourse Cafe where young people have the opportunity to engage with high-level, high-profile people from business, from academia, from politics, civil society, and so on. And the idea was not only to hear the voices of these very important people, but also to give the young students an opportunity to discuss, to also voice their own opinions, and to really inform, have a kind of discussion both ways. And when I look at this book and I see who attended, it really reads like who's who of South Africa. I mean, if there are 2 Nobel Prize laureates, former F.W. de Klerk, former President F.W. de Klerk, Archbishop Tutu, who have made themselves available as guest speakers, and we have very influential and respected South Africans such as Moletsen Beki, Trevor Manuel, Maria Ramos, Max Dupré, Wolf Meyer, and Premier Helen Zille, who have made themselves available to come and discuss certain issues. And I think just this point, you know, that people that have very little time come here and take the time to address you, for me that's an indication of 3 things. First of all, that the Institute is really becoming a brand that people recognize and they say, you know, it's important for me to be there. And secondly, I think these very important people are interested to share their own experience and their own expertise with the young generation. Because often, and I speak from experience, when you go to conferences, you have an old audience. And South Africa and the African continent is a young continent. I think, I don't have the statistics, I'm not very good at that, but maybe you know better. I mean, more than half of the population is maybe under the age of 20, 18 or so. So we are very young continent, and unfortunately, where really important issues are discussed, there are always people, most of the time people that are not really belong to this young population. Thirdly, I think these important people are really interested to hear what young people have to say. They really have a need actually to get their perspectives, because they realize these people will be the leaders. They will actually succeed them in leadership positions. I think this book also is a very good opportunity for all those students who had not the opportunity to be present at the discourse cafes to catch up and really see what has been discussed and what issues and topics came up. So I think besides this very relatively small group of people that we reach at the cafes themselves, this book will allow us to reach many more people on the campus, and hopefully not only on the Stellenbosch campus, but even a wider circle of people. You might ask yourself why the Konrad Adenauer Foundation is sponsoring such an event or such a series, and why we also put money towards such a book. And you might not be familiar with Konrad Adenauer's foundation, so just allow me to say a few words. We are a German political foundation affiliated to the Christian Democrats in Germany, Angela Merkel's party, and our aim, not only in Germany but worldwide, is to promote democracy, good governance and the rule of law. In South Africa we have been, we operate since the early 80s, so we really have seen and witnessed a transformation process from an unjust apartheid system in South Africa towards a fully fledged democracy. And I can say that South Africa is indeed a beacon of hope, not only for Africa but worldwide. I think the Constitution is always hailed as one of the most modern progressive constitutions in the whole world. But nevertheless, democracy is not a given. It's not something you have and then you can sit back, relax and enjoy yourself. It's something you have to work for, you have to protect it, and you also, the Constitution, you have to defend it. So I think when I read through the book, there was a quote of Trevor Medwin which I thought was very relevant, and he said, we need active citizenship in South Africa. If you don't care about democracy, why should the government care? All citizens should be engaged in society. And I think this is very valid not only for young people but for all ages, for all people, not only South Africa, but everybody that wants to live under a democratic system. The challenge that we see here in South Africa is that a lot of people don't see the benefit in democracy. They really haven't seen much of a change. And I think when people live under conditions where they have no jobs, no perspective, are hungry, have dreams that are not fulfilled, then you have to ask yourself, why should they defend a system that they don't see any value in? So I think the challenge will be to make democracy a value that everybody here in South Africa can appreciate and put some effort in to defend. I think that is not only the task for us as a political foundation, but of each citizen and each young person here in the room. So thank you very much, and congratulations again to all the authors for this wonderful book. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Christina. And I really look forward to see how our partnership also through the discourse cafes can impact a larger audience, as you said, also outside South Africa. I'm now going to call to the full Faith Pienaar, Tosca Ferndale and Magnus Havenga will join me for a short panel discussion so that we can reflect on the book. If you do not have a copy of the book, it might be a good idea to grab a copy quickly so that you have the text in front of you. I'll ask them questions about their experiences mostly, but it might be that they reflect on their pieces. Magnus, Tosca and Faith. I'm sure you're as excited as I am and that you've enjoyed the process with Stephanie, as she indicated, and that seeing the book and seeing your text brings about, perhaps a different feel about your own experience. Just give us an idea why you decided to participate in the project and in the end to write an article for the book.
When we were asked, very honoured in that sense to be asked to do something like that and just partner with Stephanie and just the Institute on making this realise. But I think it's a brilliant idea. It's so important that people have the opportunity to share their experiences, and it's so important that people have the opportunity to share their thoughts. Because you use just the metaphor of like iron sharpening iron. Like your ideas should sharpen ideas. When people come together and just talk about something and like hash it out, share ideas, you may not agree with people, but you cannot deny that someone else's opinion sharpens your opinion or your ideas and your thoughts in some way. So for me, this book is a good opportunity to do that on a larger scale. Because like I said, like the discourse cafes are a little bit smaller, they're a little bit more like intimate in a sense. And this book really was an opportunity to say that what's happening in the discourse cafes every second week or so can now happen on a larger scale, not just at those events.
Just to echo what Tosca was saying, I decided to participate in the project because I wanted to be a part of a platform that allowed younger people to contribute to intellectual thought and debate in our country and in our world. So it's really easy for me to set up a blog and to write about my thoughts, but it's something completely different if my thoughts are together in a book with other young people. And I think that there are very limited spaces where young people can share their thoughts in a debate type essay way, and to be supported in this kind of format. And so I thought it was fantastic, and that's why I wanted to be a part of the process.
I think from the start, Discourse Cafe has been a wonderful initiative because it takes students and put them into conversation with one another, but also then with thought leaders, people from different spheres of society, and also then the whole generational thing, that people that came before us and did great things in our country. I think this is the book project is just a continuation of that discussion that took place. From the start, at every Discourse Cafe, we said in the end that this is not the end of the conversation. We want this conversation to go on. We want, if you go back to your res or the place where you stay, where you walk on the road plane, where you sit in classroom, we want these conversations to keep on going and to inspire people and to also bring about new conversations. And I think this is why this book is absolutely wonderful, because it's sort of just another step in this walk that we've been doing at the Institute.
What were some of your highlights in writing your specific piece, or perhaps a highlight from the specific Discourse Cafe that you wrote about?
Okay, I'll just go. My piece is on Willie Esteza, and I obviously knew that he was involved in the discussions and negotiations pre-1994, but to hear that story in person and to hear that narrative of how someone who was, or who appeared to be on one opposite end of the spectrum, and him align himself with a greater vision for South Africa was really powerful. So yeah, it was kind of a weird aha moment, like, okay, this is, I can actually sit next to him and talk to him about it.
Yeah, I would agree. For me, the interesting thing about the Discourse Cafes was the fact that you had certain ideas about the people you were speaking to. The media portrays them in a certain way. We've read about them in school textbooks. We've heard our people around us, our parents, our friends speaking, talking about them. And now you have the opportunity to speak to the person themselves. So I had the opportunity I wrote about our meeting with FW de Klerk. That for me, the interesting thing, and something that I tried to portray in the piece that I wrote, is that I've heard a lot about him before, and obviously we sort of, all of us think we know FW de Klerk. But here you have this almost surreal situation where his secretary said we didn't have to organise parking, and you'll be just dropped off next to the place. So you have the car driving in and him dropping off, and now he's standing next to you. And you're sort of conversing about sort of the flowers there and how the weather and sort of progressing, and before long you're talking about a lot of other stuff, important stuff. And that was interesting to see the person in a different life, learning and sort of without sort of the smoke screen of the media or the way certain opinion writers have sort of influenced one.
I wrote on both Monet Mbeki and Maria Ramos, but I think for me, when Maria Ramos came, she came to the honorary lecture, and it was the most pivotal part of the whole lecture for me was when she started speaking about things that I encountered in my short course, because at the time I just finished students as agents, the agents course. I just finished the agents course, and it was so amazing to see how what we were learning, what we were talking about went beyond just the. She came, she was speaking about just like the change in the country, where's the country at, like what have we achieved, what we still have to achieve, and it was one of just those, like Faith said, aha moments, like we're not alone, people are thinking, and there are places and people that are ready to like take hands and say, let's change things, and it was amazing to see that just from just all the discourse and writing on it, because she came 2 or 3 years ago, and then we wrote on it last year, and just reflecting back on that, when I was writing, asking myself, in this, in the actual, honorary lecture, I sat there challenging myself, saying like, what am I doing, what am I going to do, and kind of like dreaming in a sense, and formulating ideas, and when I got to write on Maria Ramos again and reflect on that, I got to reflect on that process and be like, ask myself, what have I done, what am I doing, and it was really, I wouldn't say nice, but it was really important as a reflective point for, you know, if you're changing South Africa, if you're changing anything, you kind of have to, and every now and then do checks and balances and say, am I achieving it? Am I on the same path? The path changes, but you know, is the ultimate goal still being achieved? So that was.
Manas, I think you alluded to it, but I'd like to ask another question to you, and it's something that I think Gilbert would also enjoy to answer. Christina indicated why she thinks that there are and why individuals are willing to engage with students and why they decided to come to the discourse cafes. Why do you think people respond to your invitation? I remember a remark that FW de Klerk made on the day, but perhaps there are some reasons why you think they came.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting aha moment when Gilbert and I realized back even in Res that we could invite people, anyone, and they would answer us and they would come. So I don't think necessarily sort of you're going to have that opportunity soon again when you leave university. But now we were sitting there in our Res room and we could send an email and sort of get an answer, and people would come and they would speak to us. That was a very empowering realization. And I do believe that a lot of the thought leaders of yesterday and of today know and believe that the future of the country is in you, and they need to speak with and converse and dialogue with us, so that we can learn and they can learn, as was alluded to also by you in the beginning. I think that was the wonderful thing of these conversations. You had everyone that I attended, quite a few of them, it felt that we were sort of on equal grounds. People were respecting the opinion and asking and wanting to learn. So we came there and wanting to learn from people that we invited. And they were sort of like, we're not going to speak, we want you to speak. And they were taking notes and writing up and sending emails afterwards. So FW de Klerk, about 2 weeks later, I walked into him at a shopping center, and he sort of almost like ran over and he was starting to say, well, what was said by the students on that day, he's been lying awake and thinking, and it's really had a big influence on the way he sees things. So I think there's also then in our country at the moment, I think people realize that we need to speak to one another and also cross-generational dialogue, which is very important.
Okay, but when you talk about the speaking and engaging and the dialogue and young people's voices, if you think about the younger thought leaders in South Africa, what would your pearls of wisdom be to other young South Africans?
I think my words of wisdom, my 22 years words of wisdom would be that that we can take ownership. And I think even more recently, I think more young people are realizing that you can take ownership and you can write a blog, you can influence your space by inviting people, by deciding to have a conversation with someone who was involved in the public 20 years ago. You can. So there's a sense now, especially in young people in South Africa, that the responsibility is shared, that there's some kind of ownership. So my words of wisdom would be that whatever you're passionate about, and it doesn't necessarily have to be around the themes of politics and development, but whatever you're passionate about, you can take ownership of that and help transform a society. Yeah.
I wrote down a quote because it's one of my favorite quotes. It's by Coco Chanel, and she says the most courageous act is still to think for yourself aloud. And with that, it's important to think, and it's important to think aloud. It's important to have a sounding board. I think there's nothing more productive than people who want to thinking together. And yeah, if I had any 22 years of wisdom, I'd say think with other people. When you come to these type of conversations, stay for the conversation afterwards. Allow your opinion to be sharpened. Allow what you're thinking to be sharpened. Because, like a lot of reading back when I was reading now, I can owe a lot of what I said to the people around me because I thought a different way. And I won't say they corrected me, but they made me think differently. So yeah, as many times as you can, as often as you can, in every sphere possible, especially if it's something that you're particularly interested in. So if you're very interested in politics, make sure that you find yourself in spaces where people are thinking about politics together. And that is how I personally think, that's how great things happen. That's how you change things with each other.
Marvelous. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I think we need to speak to each other. I think that's the important thing. And as long as the conversation is going on, as long as we see eye to eye, and we can have, we can dialogue and even sort of, and critique each other's views, but always sort of keeping the conversation alive, speaking to each other. I think we can go forward.
Thank you. I'm going to open the floor for a couple of questions to the authors in front. So if everyone would like to ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. Just give us an indication of perhaps your name if you don't mind, and then you're welcome to ask the question. Helen.
Okay, I'm Helen Price. Maybe each of you could just comment on how this engagement and how the Discourse Cafe, the thoughts that you've shared with us now, how that had actually inspired you and the impact that it will have, and do you actually see yourself in not just while you're at university, but really taking this forward as leaders within the country? How had this helped you to perhaps have a vision about where you want to be, and how this can help other students also do that?
I think the greatest value that Discourse Cafe, for me personally, has, and how it has helped me in terms of expanding my frame of reference. You always dream as big as you can see, and it's nice when not nice, but it's profound when you have people who are, business leaders or political leaders or leaders of NGOs coming and telling their stories, and almost that encouragement of, I also just started as a student. I didn't have much. I didn't think I was, I didn't think I'd be a leader. Now we look up to them as leaders. So from that, it's really been encouraging just to hear their stories, because it is a big emphasis in Discourse Cafes, besides that they come to speak about like a certain topic. They usually do share a bit of themselves and share a bit of that, that story, that where they've come from and how they uplifted themselves. So from that, like that alone, before they start giving opinions, is very encouraging for students. And I think the more students encounter that, of these powerhouses saying that they had small beginnings, students are encouraged through that to understand that they can also be powerhouses, that like changing the country is within their reach.
Just to echo what Tosca is saying, that this opportunity expanded her frame of reference. So for 4 years, this was my building. This is where I studied winemaking, and so this is where I spent most of my time. And what Discourse Cafe allowed me to do was expand my frame of reference. My world, or my student life and my student development, was not restricted to these 4 buildings and the cellar downstairs. It became much bigger. And Magnus alluded to this earlier, the fact that we had intergenerational, even just different kinds of conversation made people of opinion and influence very accessible to me. And so how I see this impacting my future is that I feel that to some degree, I don't think that I'm fully equipped now, but to some degree, I'm equipped to help changing the spaces that I occupy. I'm not too sure exactly what that will look like 20 years from now, but I know that in the impact in the communities where I go into, I have the skills, because discourse cafes and other things that the Institute provides, it provides with an outside of classroom experience, which I would have not have gotten without this experience. Yeah.
Even though I'm still a student, this is the first year I'm not living on Stellenbosch, also working in a completely different context in a neighboring town. And daily I'm amazed by how I use the skills that I've learned out of the classroom at Stellenbosch University, and also here at the Institute, in the different contexts that I need to be and work in. Thinking critically, engaging with certain topics, speaking with people, conversing on, debating certain issues, it almost becomes a way of life. And not living on Stellenbosch, not being actively part of the conversation on campus at the moment, has actually been a wonderful thing, seeing that there's a very strong continuity between where I am now and where I was a year ago, 2 or 3 years ago. So I think it empowers us being here for our way forward. And I've experienced this. That's exactly how it panned out for me this year.
Matthew.
Hi, my name is Matthew. I've got a question, I suppose, to the panel. It's one thing, I think, approaching students and people who are keen to practice leadership and learn by inviting people to speak and so forth. But do you perhaps have any advice or things that you have learned through your own personal experience, and how do you practice that skill? So, going to a workshop and listening to a talk is you developing your skills. But how does one go out from that room into those who are perhaps not going to the discourse cafe because it's not worth their time, but are still interested? How would you approach that situation? Merely sending class, or just interested to hear if you guys have firstly had any of that, a situation like that, and if so, how did you deal?
I think the value of the discourse cafes are not mainly the conversation that happens in the discourse cafes, but exactly the conversation that happens outside. So the discourse cafe is always there so that the conversation on the outside could happen. I think that's exactly how it played out. And week on week, we had different people coming to the discourse cafes, exactly because they heard what happened at the last one and took part and conversed with their friends on what happened So I think there's a ripple effect, and that's a wonderful thing about something like a discourse cafe. But wherever people are empowered or learn new stuff or a new skill set, obviously it is not there for that moment, but for the world on the outside. So.
Yeah, I think that's the best tool you have, is the fact that you're empowered, and when people engage with you, your engagement is, I won't say richer, but you engage in a better manner. And I don't know, that's just my experience throughout the years. People often ask why, and then you can willingly direct them to the discourse cafes. And it is, there'll always be something and someone interesting at a discourse cafe. I think it's also just getting it out there, telling people about it, saying that, and explaining also to them who the people are. Sometimes you'll be like, oh, Maria Ramos is coming. They're like, who's that? You know, you can't assume that everybody knows everybody that's coming. But yeah, I think it's the discourse cafes by themselves, for me personally, have a draw, especially people I've encountered.
Just to answer your question, I think what the discourse cafe has over the past 3 years have taught me is the power of conversation and how to steer a conversation. So I like to think of it in the way that I have little discourse cafes every day. So when I speak to someone in my house, or when I speak to my classmates, I can draw some. It's not just on the surface, or like, you know, it's not just, hey, how are you? It's more, I can learn from you. And I think that in getting students, I think part of your question was, how do we get students here? This isn't their interest. I think that the students who do attend discourse cafes are, to some degree, have the ability to have a different kind of conversation. So it's not just that, I did this morning. It's almost like, what is your opinion, and let's debate, or let's differ on this, or you come from this part of the country, tell me more about it. So it's definitely, in the past few years, it has made my conversations and with different students richer to some degree.
For me, the interesting thing about the discourse cafes were the fact that once this started happening, you saw a lot of other similar initiatives sort of starting up all over campus. So I think, in a way, the value of it has also been people seeing what happened here, seeing that it is possible, one, to invite the speakers to come to people, but also for students to speak to each other. You do not always have to get students there by promising them free food, or having some music art display, or showing some pop film. You could actually get students together speaking about relevant topics. So you had different grades, faculties, all over the place. People were having these conversations, and we actually spoke about it. We said, so how do we sort of react to it? Because we also sort of started the brand and stuff, but it doesn't matter. That's exactly what we wanted. So we were glad. So if you're going to have another discourse cafe, even in the same time, that's great to have it. That's why we started initially. So I think sort of the proof is in the pudding, and that's what happened. So
thank you. Perhaps one or two last questions. Llewellyn, jy moet kan vra.
Hi, my name is Laura and I'm studying at third year Bachelor of Divinity, and I'd just like to thank you for this discourse cafe and also all the sponsors that have been involved. I'm also involved in student leadership, and I find it very moving when I hear this type of language, a language that stimulates change, a language that stimulates movement, dynamic thinking. I like it. I love it, in fact. However, I also find that in my sort of evaluating my journey, I realized that I also haven't contributed as much to my own family in terms of enlightening them and also wanting to hear their own views of what is happening in your mind and how are you experiencing contextual issues in our country today. So I'd like to ask, how have you been influential in your own family? And how is that reflecting in even the way you communicate with other people today?
Families? Johannesburg, Stellenbosch. Let's hear it.
Well, we are a family that likes to talk. You don't believe it. Conversation with me. So I must say I have a family of academics, which is quite nice. Like most of the people in my family have a degree. So it became richer for them to see me engaging with them, because in our family how it works is the younger people, it's kind of, they're not allowed to be heard, and they speak to each other, and then all the people speak together. And it was, for me, just from that point of view, especially with like my uncles and things, it was changing to be able to engage with them on topics like in the country and with confidence. I think that's the best thing that's given me was confidence, because having engaged with these people, I kind of have like a upper hand on them because like I actually saw him speak. You read his article, so it made you a little cocky. But that confidence to like engage with people who are older, who have, I mean, like my uncle who went to UWC, and if you talk to him about politics, he's quite passionate. So it's that confidence to speak to them, and almost that respect that they got, like, oh, you are informed. Because I think a lot of the older generation does sometimes write students off as students. You know, you don't know how to think. You're actually just at university or wasting money or partying, whatever. And it was, I don't know, for me personally, from that point of view, it was changing just in my family dynamic to see how they started listening to younger people just because you have an informed opinion now.
I think for my family in particular, I think the impact that Discourse Cafe has for my family is that I think they realize that how fast like society has changed. So I think for my family, the fact that like we talk about a lot of topical and debate-worthy topics on campus was okay, you know, that's quite a shocker. So I think through my involvement on campus and through just my interest, I think that they see that South Africa to some degree is changing, and it's a different dynamic. To echo what Tosca was saying, also it has given me a bit of credit and valid, like a voice in my house, you know, so I can actually say and state my opinion and clearly communicate that, which I don't think I could always do. I think I was quite young, and regardless of being, I don't know, second or third year, I was always viewed as a child. But I think navigating this space and then coming back into my family space, I could actually be like, hey, I'm a child, but I'm also an adult, and I can communicate my opinions effectively. And so it gave my voice a bit of weight, which is quite interesting now with all my hustle.
I think it's important to realize that what happens here on campus, in and out of the classroom, stretches way further than campus. If you've ever been in Stellenbosch during the holidays, you would have seen that it's a ghost town. So you've got 30,000 students that, when it's holiday time, go back to their families. So I think that's a very powerful thing. And the hope is that the conversation that started here will also continue at home. I grew up in a family that encouraged discourse, encouraged debate, encouraged conversation from a very early age. And it was wonderful coming to a place where that was further developed, and also taking it back home again. And making it part of the way one lives.
Right, thank you. Perhaps the last question? Josh.
Forgive me if I stand up. I'll say the same thing as you with public speaking. I love going to short courses, and especially with the Discipline Institute. But what's increasingly stressing me out is how do we translate that to change? So now I'm trying to figure out we're doing the Beyond Borders course at the moment, and slowly trying to figure out how do we make a recognizable impact on things like food scarcity or just general inequality. So how do you guys experience the kind of thoughts that you have in the Discourse Cafe being translated into action? What about it?
For me, the important thing from the start is not only with the Discourse Cafe, but with the Institute as a whole, leadership development, that it should never be put against what happens in the classroom. So I think the important thing is we empower people out of the classroom, but it is also a university, so we empower people inside the classroom. So these two things need to come together once one leaves university. Obviously, we do a lot of stuff while we're on campus, but I think there's always a danger to sort of focus only on the leadership development thing and not really on your studies. And I think that is quite important to equip yourself as good as possible so that you can go out and be in a position somewhere in the world, if it's as a business leader or as a doctor or as a minister, use these leadership skills. Leadership is using influence, and I think that is a very important thing that I think, and also I think a sort of plead with the Institute that should always be important. One does not want someone with all this wonderful leadership skills going out and instead of changing the world, he's sort of, struggling to find a place to do that. And on the other hand, I think the thing about Discourse Cafes could be that we're only speaking to each other, but I think the country is at a place at the moment where these conversations need to go over in action and will go over in action. We can't sort of be speaking like this and that it will naturally, I think, go over and change South Africa.
Well, I've had a similar stress to you, and I remember I said it to one of my very best friends, and she said, Tosca, see a need, fill a need. Like, that is it. She says that's leadership. So if you see a need, you fill it, and you find people that share that passion and share that anxiety about that need, and you fill it. I think I wrote actually in my piece about Maria Ramos, where she really brought it home and said, I really translated that of sometimes we make changing the world a thing over there. We've got to change the world, we've got to start an NGO. But you don't realize that you have a space where you are right now that can be changed just by simple application of, you've picked up the skill to learn to facilitate a conversation, and in your house there is a very tough conversation, and that skill immediately kicks in where you help everyone in your house understand each other because you have the skill of facilitation. And it's small things, it's in the small things almost that you start changing and you make big changes. Again, I'm very happy people should start NGOs, people should start massive movements, people should do these things. But I think sometimes when we put our power to change the world in something like a movement or an NGO, or after I'm in my res for a year, it will look completely different. When we start putting our power to change in those things, we become complacent because we actually cripple ourselves, because there is physically no way that after doing a short course, in 2 months' time, you're going to change everything. It's just not how it works. So, see a need, fill a need. If you have a big desire to change something, and it's like food scarcity, if it's really on your heart like that, think with people. Come together, find people who are passionate about food scarcity, and think about how you're going to change it. But also in that, remember that your skills contribute in everyday things for you, and that's also how you're going to change the world. It's not just there, but it's
I'm just going to echo on what Tosca was saying. I think every single leadership book I've read has said, the first page or even the last page, that you are a leader. Regardless of who you are a leader. I always just think this is quite a cheesy thing. Okay, not everyone's leaders, but that's the thing. Everyone is a leader. And you said your name was Josh. So Josh, you have a circle of influence. You have friends. You belong to a class. You're one day going to graduate, then you're going to occupy a place in an organization. Your impact on your circle of influence and the role that you're going to play in your organization is going to be leadership. And for a year or two, I was like, I'm doing all these cool things, but I'm not being an active citizen. And I was like, okay, then I had to really redefine what does that mean for me. And so I think that, like what Tosca was saying, changing the world isn't about necessarily creating big movements, but it's really about empowering yourself enough to lead organizations or your circles. It can even be as simple as leading a family. There's so much value in leading a family to make a difference, So I think that our ideas of leadership, to some degree, also need some flexibility so that we know that what you're doing and what I'm doing is still contributing to society.
Thank you very much. I'm going to end the panel discussion here. Stephanie, I think we're ready for perhaps another book. And perhaps as an audience we're ready to continue our own reflections on perhaps also what's our perceptions of younger South Africans' thinking and thoughts. What we think younger South Africans do or that they do not do might not be correct. And I'm very grateful for the fact that the three also tweeting and taking a photo participants of the panel discussion could join us and share a little bit more about that.
Self-regeneration.
So thank you very much for that. Look, and let's just sit, as ek vir Martie vorentoe roep. One of the things that I do in the Discourse Cafes that I don't think they realize, the ones that I can attend, is I listen until the speaker makes a remark about Van Zyl Slag. Because somehow, I think it is also in the invitation, I suppose, that people decide to come, perhaps also what they will say, because of the connection with Van Zyl. And it often happens that if someone does not ask a direct question, that at the end the speaker would say, I just want to say one more thing, and then mention an interaction with Van Zyl, or an experience with Van Zyl, or a thought that he or she remembers about Van Zyl, which I think is significant also in giving, I suppose, in another dimension, a life to the ideas and ideals Van Zyl Slag, but also through the cafes and the interactions that we have with students. Martin Meiring has agreed to say one or two things about Van Zyl and perhaps connect some of the thoughts and the questions that we've heard with his story. Baie dankie, Martin.
Baie dankie vir die uitnodiging en veel geluk met hierdie pragtige boek. As jy dit is daarom tweetalig, ek hoor julle weer vandag het ingehaat hier met die taal sê. Having known Van Zyl Slag and thinking about him now is quite something. First thing I want to do before I actually get to what you guys have said is, Leslie, you might be able to help me, or Nico might be able to help me. Why? I never asked him, why did Van Zyl Slag come to Stellenbosch to do theology? En hoekom het hy so gauw verander?
Albert is writing on that currently, so you must speak to Albert Grindler.
Oh, yeah, Albert, I never asked him. And you know, his great friend, Johan Degenaar, did the same thing. So I think we should actually go to the Queer School and ask them, wat gaan aan? En mense nie so lang kan aanbly. But I knew Van Zyl through politics as a reporter, and then also when I was on the Vrije Weekblad and he was our kind giver. I've not in my entire life encountered a greater fundraiser than Van Zyl Slag. I think he was worse than Mandela, quite frankly, because he'd hardly see you and then you'd sort of dish out money. And of course, Christine knows too that you've come a long way with Van Zyl and, you know, with the Soplaatjie discourse, and yeah. So he would go to a place and he'd come back with money. He'd have lunch with Oppenheim and he'd come back with a bursary. I think was Cecil John Rose was called for this. One thing about Van Zyl was he was reckless, he was calculating, and he failed. He failed quite a lot. And this was something that didn't really haunt him, but he would talk about it. And in a sense too, he failed, he thinks, well he thought, quite stupendously, because he had thought that black empowerment was going to be the great thing in the middle of the 90s, and of course there's this great friendship with Mbeki, and then there was this wonderful period that they had thought that they'd make this breakthrough in actually getting black and white together. Those were crucial racial thinking, philosophies going around. And in the end, Van Zyl admitted that they had failed to do that, but we know that BEE was one of the things that actually flowed from those discussions and attempts that they had made. He did with Kula, his company. But what I'd like to tell you about Van Zyl is his involvement with the arts. And that is how I got to know him quite well, because in 2002 I was on the board of Art Group and we invited him to become our chairman. Now, Van Zyl is no culture vulture. He comes from a family that is involved in the arts, but he certainly not. And so this was quite something we did. Of course we did it because we knew he was a good fundraiser, and we knew he was a good talker, and we knew he could help us as far as our business acumen was concerned, which he did in a sense, but then he became involved in the arts, and actually became quite prescriptive. In the end, this was a very good thing. He could never sit through any play, and in those days we had short plays, they were an hour long, and he and JP Landman, they thought and they advised us to half those plays, like 30 minutes at the utmost. And so going to theatre with Van Zyl was quite an experience. It was sometimes it was excruciating, but also hilarious. We did this fantastic show, Maria de Buenos Aires, and there was lots of music and tango and great theatre and drama in there. And Van Zyl and JP, they became entranced with the dancer in our entry. And then Van Zyl said, "Kyk, daar gaan sy, kyk, JP, daar sy, kyk, kyk." And we had the audience around us, you know, they were all looking at Van Zyl, and he was going, "Yes, it's good there." And, you know, this went on, and so fortunately this also ended after an hour and a half. Maar dit was nou Van Zyl, sy kunstgevoel was nie so diep nie, but one thing he did say, and he was quite adamant about that the arts had to have some kind of relevance and to what was happening and is happening in the country. And at that stage, we had, at Art Group, we had a discourse, we called it discourse, we just called it talks. It was this whole Plaatjie-reeks. And that's Konrad Adenauer Stiftung was also through Van Zyl. They were great sponsors. And then he thought this was really a great idea, and eventually he developed this into a television series that was really quite something. His friend Jürgen Kegel was always on edge because he never knew who Van Zyl was going to invite. And of course, Van Zyl invited the world, you know, the extremes of the world, and so this was, I think, quite a very good series. And that was Van Zyl. I would like to, he knew the dirtiest songs in Afrikaans, and I do wish that I'd written them down, because he was a great man for sing-songs, which is really something that is, you expect it in rugby circles. But of course he was a great rugby player too. But then any meeting would end in a sing-song, and he would sing these god-awful ditties. I do wish that I could remember them, but they were really under the belt, and I don't know where he got them from, but they were good old Afrikaans songs. So that's one thing about Van Zyl. He was aspiring theologian student, was also the dirtiest singer that I think of. But that was Van Zyl. One day we were driving from one place to another, and he, which he often does, starts talking to himself. And this was about his friendship and the failure of the friendship with Mbeki. I do wish that I could have written or taken that conversation on, because Van Zyl, I think history will not forget that friendship and the breakup of that friendship. It was very long. They had met, I think, in the early 80s. And this was 2003, and Van Zyl had just finished the report on the electoral task team, with the electoral task team. And then a lot of people thought that the breakup, that Van Zyl, that Mbeki had actually pushed Van Zyl away, and this was after Mbeki had become president, and the expectation was that he would include Van Zyl in his cabinet, which he didn't. But the breakup really came in 2003. And Van Zyl said, dit het gebeur omdat hy gedink het, ons wit mense wil te veel sê. With words and those in that direction. And I thought this was a very sad thing to say, but I must share that with you because that was a conversation, and it could have been one of those things that Van Zyl had just thought of and then said aloud at the time. But I thought that was, to me it was very sad. I thought it was a sort of indictment on where we were at that specific time. But in any case, after he died, there was a lot of conjecture about how this friendship had ended and why this friendship had ended. And I do think that will always remain one of the elements of Van Zyl's life. But then, of course, he was a great thinker. He was very charismatic. Of course, he wouldn't agree to that, of course. And he said preposterous things, but he did the most incredible service to this country. And I do think the fact that people say that, after he was like Jan Smuts and he was like Jannie Hofmeyer, that he probably was the great thinker that we had in this country. Thank you.
Baie dankie, Martie. Ek sou baie graag hoor by die jong mense van daai Van Zyl ook te sê, maar miskien hoor ons dit in die gesprekke wat gaan volg. Friends, we've come to the end of the launch. There is a number of copies of the books available, and as you'll see right after this, we'll share something to snack on and drink, and it's extremely dark outside, so perhaps it will entice you to stay longer. I'd love to thank my colleagues who has made this evening possible. Sanetta, she left, in particular Sanet van Zyl and Ferdy van Dijk at the back, who's made the evening possible. And with the two colleagues, a number of other colleagues at Stellenbosch University in the office within the broader student affairs. Dr. Rudolf Botha is here, Llewellyn McMaster is here, keen colleague Ellen Tice. I see Noel Beckers at the back, Desmond, Communication and Liaison, the Rector's Office, and so forth. Now I really must acknowledge the fact that when we developed the idea of the Institute, one of the agreements that we had and made specifically was that it must reach and interact on a number of levels with faculties and with colleagues in other divisions in Stellenbosch University. I'm really glad to see how that is developing. And Albert, ons sien daarna uit om nog meer van Zyl te leer, om deel te neem aan die gesprekke oor Van Zyl en hoe dit uitspeel in die navorsing. Ellen will announce at the honorary lecture that will take place on the 22nd that where we stand with the Van Zyl Slabbert collection at Stellenbosch University. So I'll leave that for the honorary lecture. But it is coming together as a wonderful collection that I hope younger people and South Africans in general can share so that they can discover the various facets of Van Zyl and the historical relevance of Van Zyl for the languages in South Africa today. So ek hoop Albert se bakker bly help ons om nog meer te ontdek van Van Zyl. Thank you to everyone who participated in the program today. Stephanie, baie dankie weer vir jou deelname. Christina, it really amazes me to see how our interaction continues to develop, and we'll see each other again on the 22nd at the honorary lecture, where I'll thank you on a different level. Thank you for making this possible once again. To Faith, Tosca, and Boris for sharing not only your experience at the event, but a number of personal, not only thinking and thought processes, but experiences that enriches us, not only in terms of what you've said, but also in the fact that it has, and I suppose after this evening, will help us to think further about our own roles, our own experiences, the people who we interact with, the people who we invite, and the type of conversations that we have also the conversations that we have with our families and in our homes. En Martie, baie dankie ook vir 'n ons sê nou maar 'n van Sail perspektief ook oor Stellenbosch en van Sail se kringe buite Stellenbosch, ook buite die politiek. Dit is lekker om ook van Sail buite die politiek te hoor. South Africa, and specifically the higher education realm, is entering a very interesting and I suppose very exciting new phase. One of our colleagues the other day said that there was 2 significant events in higher education over the last decade. And that one was, of course, the rates incident at the University of the Free State, 2007-2008, the effects thereafter, and most probably the happenings at UCT over the last 2-3 weeks that led to the removal of Cecil John Rhodes' statue from the middle campus at UCT. I think the exciting part of the conversation is that we cannot say that young people in South Africa do not participate in conversations. We cannot say that young people are not willing to take up conversations. And we cannot say that students specifically fall in the trap of just being students and not sensing their interaction with society. I think you put it amply that this town empties out. It says something about students. Maar daar's ook iets anders by sulke momente, soos die 76 momente en waarskynlik ook die Marikana gebeurtenis. En dit is dat dit nooit 'n gesprek van een generasie kan wees nie. The type of interactions that we have, the influences that we have, intergenerational, is most probably what will aid and influence the direction of the debates currently at universities and in South Africa in general. Whether it be conversations about xenophobic attacks in Durban, or the removal of the Rhodes statue, or the debate that we had on campus today, it can never be the conversation of one generation. And if we've learned one thing in the discourse cafes, it is that the younger voice is stronger than we might think, but it is a voice that wants to link directly and needs to link with the voices of previous generations. Now, I hope this is true for not only this university, but for the higher education sphere in South Africa. Baie dankie dat julle gekom het, baie dankie dat julle deel is op soveel vlakke van die Van Sail Leierskapsinstituut. Ek sien uit daarna om nog 'n glasie wyn met julle te geniet en om oor die volgende ruim paar jaar te sien hoe hierdie instituut verder groei, ook in sy jong stemme wat Suid-Afrika voed. Baie dankie.